All right. Lots to talk about today. How's everyone doing? Welcome to the show. So today we're going to be talking about whether or not Rainmaker is actually providing evidence, damning evidence. We're talking lots about rain. Is the company presenting damning evidence to itself in regards to the flood that happened in Kerr County? So we're going to be talking about that. This is a serious issue if it's true. If Rainmaker caused a flood in Kerrville that cost the lives of over 100 people, one life is too many. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to document as I go along what Augustus, the CEO and founder of Rainmaker, is saying over the course of the next few days, few weeks, just observing what he's saying, and then we do a little bit of research on what he's saying to see if it's true or not true and all this kind of stuff, because I'm not out to get this organization. I don't have a dog in the fight or anything like that. I don't work for any regulatory body or any government agency or anything like that. I was horrified by what I saw happen in Texas. And I know there's other floods going on right now in New Mexico, in I think it's North Carolina, like other places are getting hit. I think Chicago's next. Like it's getting us to the point where we become desensitized and we start thinking this is normal. This is just happens. Everything was the perfect storm. We live in an area called Flash Flood Alley, so this is part of the deal. This is how it works, living in America. This is just part and parcel of being an American. We get flooded. We don't get any warnings. We pay billions of dollars to organizations to help us get to Mars or the moon or somewhere else, to inhabit Mars underground for hundreds of years and then maybe one day be able to live on top of Mars. But we can't warn people 24 hours before an imminent flood. We don't, for some reason, we either don't have the technology, we don't have the capability, or it's not our problem. Because those that argue that, hey, we have the technology, like people are saying this now, today, they're saying we have it, then the question is, well, why didn't you use it? Why didn't you warn the people of Kerrville? And when I say Kerrville, I'm talking about Kerr County. I'm talking about all the regions that were affected. So think of me as your defendant. Who's you? It would be Texas. I'm here for you, for the people. I'm here for you. Let's dig through all this debris. Let's overturn everything and let's have a look and see what's going on here, because I don't think it makes Texans feel good to say this is normal. Explain that to their family, the families that lost children. So I don't let this stuff go lightly. I don't let it go. And I don't think you should either. I think we need a thorough investigation, specifically on Rainmaker. I find it odd that Augustus is just making interview after interview. Like, if you're the defense lawyer for Kerr County as a whole, and I think you guys should get a defense lawyer or a team of lawyers, good lawyers. And I would record every single interview that Augustus is saying. If I was on Augustus' side, if I was his team lawyer, I would say, shut up. You're going to disintegrate our organization. You're going to damn us to hell and back. Stop it, Augustus. Stop talking. Because people like the Black Swan are going to pick you apart. They're going to pick you apart based on what you're saying. Not what you do, but what you say you do. So there's a big difference because I have no evidence of what happened in Texas leading up to the flood, me personally, because I wasn't there. So the next line of thinking is, well, who was there? And if there was somebody there, what are they saying they did during that time frame? And this is how we get on to Rainmaker, because he is singing like a canary, man. I'm telling you. He's singing like a canary. But I wanted to dive into a couple of scripture verses and then perhaps share some reasons why I think weather modification could be evil. Could be evil. And I know I'm going to get something below the screen that maybe if you don't watch this live, maybe you watch it a day later. I'm going to get something, I'm sure, embedded talking about weather modification. There is no such thing as weather modification. And then they'll say something about chemtrails or whatever it is. I'm not talking about chemtrails. I'm talking about weather modification. We have to be clear here. And so we're going to dive into a little bit about what this is about. And hopefully you guys have watched my previous videos on weather modification so we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. But it is a real thing, weather modification. It is real. Don't let the media outlets today tell you that is not a thing. That is not true. When you see government officials saying to you in Texas, there's nothing to see here. No company caused this storm, and they point right at the screen. You gotta kind of pay attention. When Bill Nye goes on news, goes on a news network and says that it's because of Trump. It's because Trump is cutting the NASA budget by 24%. Doesn't he know this is going to be the end of our world? We need NASA. We need more funding for NASA. Suddenly you start wondering, why are people mad at Trump all of a sudden for this flood in Texas? Why are they blaming him and blaming his big bill and saying that if he had done his job as a president, this wouldn't have happened? And then you get people like Bill Nye standing up for NASA saying, Donald Trump's going to destroy NASA. And if we don't have NASA, that's it. He just did an interview. And then they joke about it. They joke about vaccines and they joke about JFKR, like Junior, talking about, oh, see, he's talking about all these chemicals in our foods, these red dye, all this kind of stuff. And he's kind of cuckoo, whatever. So you're going to believe an actor named Bill Nye that's coming against Trump and deflecting away from the flood, what's going on in Texas. And you're going to listen to governors that have their pockets, basically they're deep in weather modification, almost every state. I'm sure of it. Don't make me go down that rabbit hole, but I am sure that every state is involved in weather modification in some form, whether it's producing snow for ski hills in Colorado, other states, I am sure. And if I go down that rabbit hole, I'm going to find out that just about every state is involved in some form of weather modification. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm pretty confident with the research that I've done in the last week, because this wasn't a thing on my radar until something happened in Texas, that there is this has been going on since the 40s. This is not something new. And news networks are going to try and explain this flood away. And this is why I've called this flood a black swan event, because the third criteria is you use hindsight to explain it away. You use hindsight. When all the media outlets were not warning Kerrville, not warning Kerr County on July 3rd. There was one warning that said potential flood, lots of rain, at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on July 3rd. The next one was at 1 a.m. on July 4th that said you got 20 feet of a swell, a wall of water hitting you. Some say 30 feet. That's all you get for all your money that you spend into the various government agencies to protect you and to warn you, especially if you're in an area that they say is called Flash Flood Alley and there's no warning signs, there's no sirens going off the day before, nothing. That's weird, isn't it? So I feel for the Texans, and I've called Alberta. Alberta is the mini Texas. We love our oil and gas. We love it. And I know you guys do as well. But you guys have been getting the craziest weather. Snow in the summer. Like, I think it was a few years ago where you guys got shut down. You had so much snow. It was weird. And now you're getting all these floods all over. Texas is just being hammered. And yeah, eventually you got to sit down and start asking yourself, why are we getting hammered? What did we do? Why is this all happening? But I wanted to just read a couple of scriptures first, and then we can go into what Augustus is saying about his organization and why he's saying that they didn't do it, but yet every time he opens his mouth, he's damning himself. So let's go to, this is a book I've been reading over and over again for the past week. It's called the Book of Ecclesiastes. I'm just going to read a little bit for you. One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh. But the earth abideth forever. The sun also riseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth back to its place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about to the north, and it whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. That's Ecclesiastes 1:6. So that's kind of interesting. We got the cyclical nature of wind. Verse 7. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. I would almost suggest that there is not only are there aquifers underground, but there's also, people have found this. They said there's like lakes underneath the earth. You can find, if you drill down in the right place, you're going to find pockets of lakes underground. And here Solomon is saying all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. It's circulatory in nature. Same thing with the wind. Goes around in the circuit. There's no surprise there. Waters evaporate. We know all this stuff. So I want to go to Genesis chapter 9. And this is where we get to the part where I don't think we should be tampering with weather modification. or geoengineering. And I will establish my covenant with you. This is Genesis 9:11. Neither shall all flesh be cut off anymore by the waters of a flood. So God's saying, neither will I destroy the earth again via a flood. I'm not going to kill all flesh because of a flood. Neither shall all flesh be cut off anymore by the waters of a flood. Neither shall there anymore be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. For perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud. So this is the token. And it shall be a token for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud, so this is God bringing a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. So the token in the cloud, when you see a rainstorm and it's over, sun's just at the right level, you have precipitation still in the air, and then you see a beautiful rainbow, that's God's token to tell you he's not going to destroy all flesh again. It's a reminder. He's never going to destroy the earth again via a flood. So you can almost say, if you see a rainstorm, even if it's pretty bad, if it's a lot, and then you see a rainbow after it, it's a good chance that that was God made. But if you see a rainstorm and it's really bad and there's no rainbow, it's a good chance that was because of cloud seeding. There's a good chance. And you can find articles about this stuff that cloud seeding does not produce rainbows. Have you ever taken your garden hose and you started watering your garden and you're watering it for a while and you're in the right condition and you look down and you see the water coming out and then all of a sudden you see a rainbow kind of form and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because you're basically producing precipitation, like you're watering your lawn, you're watering the grass, you're watering the trees, whatever, and you see that water, that just tells you there's enough precipitation in there to show you that little rainbow. You won't get that with cloud seeding. You're not going to get that at all. Why? Because cloud seeding removes all the water particles out. That's the goal. The goal isn't to leave some so you can have a nice little rainbow. It's to get rid of all of it. And then the cloud will dissipate or disappear over hundreds, thousands of miles, hours, sometimes days. And the cloud dissipates. That's the goal, is to empty the cloud of every ounce of water it has. That's what silver iodide does. It clings to every water molecule, makes it heavier than gravity, and drops it. That's why you don't see rainbows. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all the flesh that is upon the earth. All right. Well, this is kind of interesting. 1 Samuel 12:17-19. Is it not wheat harvest today? This is Samuel speaking to the Israelites. They just finished asking for a king. And Samuel had just finished crying all night long. And God said, why are you crying? They asked for a king, give them a king, but tell them what's going to happen. And also tell them that I am in control of the weather. Is it not wheat harvest today? I will call unto the Lord, and he shall send thunder and rain, that ye may perceive and see that your wickedness is great, which ye have done in the sight of the Lord, in asking you for a king. So Samuel called unto the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people greatly feared the Lord and Samuel. And all the people said unto Samuel, Pray for thy servants unto the Lord thy God, that we did not, for we have added unto all our sins this evil to ask us a king. So on top of everything else we did, we're asking for a king. Please forgive us for this. It's interesting that God is in charge of the weather. That is in the Bible. So I think perhaps instead of turning to man for weather conditions, maybe we should start turning to God and saying, Lord, I need rain for my crops. Please heal my land. I think that would be safer than to use other organizations and say, you help us out. You help us, because it's not working out so well. It's not working out so well. All right, so let's go to the comments, and then we're going to go to some video clips here. Let's see what everybody's saying here. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for educating us. Well, I'm not a rocket surgeon, but I learned quickly. So I almost knew zero a week ago, and now I know something. I know something. Let's see. Let's see here. How many pilots? How many came to the restaurant? Talk a lot. Barbecue. Let's see here. All right. Let's just see if we see anything interesting. Chemtrails does produce a rainbow. I've got pictures of it. It's a chemical rainbow. I did not know that. And I think a lot of people are leaning on chemtrails as being responsible for a lot of the floods and stuff. And I promise I'm going to dig into chemtrails, but right now I know very little about chemtrails, very little about it. I don't know about that, but it's possible if it's producing precipitation, because you need precipitation to show a rainbow. You can't just have chemicals. You have to have the right amount of water molecules, the right temperature, everything to show up to have a rainbow. All right. Let's see here. Let's see here. All right. Let us. No, I haven't listened to Chuck Misler's end time stuff. Okay, let's just go to some video clips, because I think this is important. This will begin to build my case. And again, the reason why I'm making these videos is to document it in case they disappear. All right. And some people have said, Shane, you got to be careful what you're talking about, because you could be getting into danger territory. And I think truth will always win out. Truth will always win out. So let me dive into this little interview with Augustus. And this was just a day ago. So he's making lots of interviews. So let's listen to what he has to say here. And then I will interject every once in a while as well. All right. Let me play it.
How's it going, Tim?
Thanks for joining me.
Are you ready to access the platform that has brought thousands of dollars in profit?
Thanks for having me.
Would you like to, for those that don't know who you are, introduce yourself and what your company does?
Yeah, sure. My name is Augustus DeRico. I'm the founder and CEO of Rainmaker, which is a next generation cloud seeding company that flies drones into clouds and disperses a material that makes clouds rain or snow more for the sake of saving farms, ecosystems, cities, and industries that are at risk of drought.
So I think it was NBC that reported, so correct me and them if it's not true. They said your company cloud seeded in Texas 2 days before the floods happened. Is that true?
So that is true. And I should also say immediately thereafter that cloud seeding operation and all of Rainmaker's operations had nothing to do with the floods that ensued. And so just to give you context on what cloud seeding is a little bit more first.
It's funny. He says right out of the gate, just so you guys know, just for context, we had nothing to do with that flood. Okay. Prove it. Now prove it. Don't just tell me. I don't know who you are. Prove it to me that you've had nothing to do with the flood. And based on what you're saying, or what you will be saying in this interview and the other clips that I show you, it's pretty condemning.
First, and then the timeline of events as it relates to the flood. Cloud seeding relies on finding clouds that exist, right? It's not chemtrails, right? If you see a long streak in the sky, that has nothing to do with cloud seeding. It's not dimming the sun either, which is another real technology called solar radiation modification. Cloud seeding is a water supply tool invented in the United States in the 1940s that farmers have been using, that governments have been using for decades to enhance their water supplies. So in Texas, there are municipalities and farmers that contract with us to produce more water for their crops themselves, for rain on their crops, to replenish their reservoirs, to recharge their aquifers.
One thing to note too, and I think he'll mention this a little bit later. He's about 25, so he's not old. I don't want anybody to get into trouble. That's not why I'm doing it, is to try and cause more harm to this gentleman, because I know he's been getting death threats now. That's not my goal to do that. What is interesting is Texas is one of the few states that still has the death penalty. So if Rainmaker is guilty, I think more likely what will happen is that company will get fined. I don't think the CEO, Augustus, will go to jail because of all the murder that happened to all these kids in Kerrville. I don't think so. I don't think you could pin this on him. But I find it interesting that in Texas that you do have the death penalty. And there's some suspicious activity going on. I don't wish this on my worst enemy. There's something going on here, and we're trying to get to the bottom of this. And I know the more interviews he has, the more he's going to nail his own coffin, because it doesn't look good. When I say coffin, I'm not saying his demise. I'm saying this could be the end of his company. He will have to start another company somewhere else with less tighter regulations. Maybe China. Maybe he should go to China. China's not so. They're ranked number 1, and the U.S. is far behind China when it comes to weather modification. So maybe this is a time to pack your bags and leave. I don't know. I'm just saying I wouldn't be doing interviews every single day. All right. All right, so let's continue on.
Because if you look at Texas, obviously it does not need more water right now. But the Ogallala aquifer is radically depleted. As of just June 24th, there was severe drought throughout a lot of the state.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that information. That was very important for me. All right, so let's just have a quick little peek here. I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but I think it is important because he goes through a lot of stuff. Have a look at here. See this? This website is basically the what is it called? Texas Weather Association, something like that. This website here is basically, you see these little pink areas here? Bandera, Uvalde, Medina, Bexar, Frio, Atascona, McMillan, Wilson, Carnes, B. This is the company that Rainmaker was working for over these counties. So that's his jurisdiction. So all in these 10 counties. And what he mentioned was, as of June 24th, the aquifers were almost bone dry. And this is important because honestly, if he just kept his mouth shut, he'd probably get away with this stuff, because then he could say, hey, I'm just working for this association here. That's all I'm doing. I'm working for them, replenishing their aquifers. But what he's not saying is that he doesn't care about what happens out of these 10 counties because that's not his responsibility. There's no regulations that say if you dump rain in these 10 counties that you're responsible for Kerr, Kendall, Kimball, all these places. You're not responsible for that. So he could sleep like a baby knowing that what happened is not his responsibility because his district, the area that the company Rainmaker got hired was to dump rain arguably around Carnes and where's the other area? Along those eastern counties because their aquifers are low. There's a major aquifer underneath there. So it doesn't matter how much it had rained. They don't care. They're filling the aquifers because we know that just because it rains, that doesn't mean it fills the aquifers. But a targeted rain could fill the aquifers. And that's the name of the game in Texas. The name of the game is to make sure no matter what happens, your aquifers are full, even at the expense of the homes downstream, downwind, outside of our jurisdiction. Even if those homes get washed away, it's okay because our aquifers are full, meaning after the tropical rainstorms are gone, we will still have water for you citizens of Texas. So we're doing our job. Our job is to make sure you have water. Our job is not to make sure that there's flood warnings. That's not where we spend our money. We spend our money. Your taxpayer money is going to making sure that you guys have water. If you don't have water for 3 days, you're done. So that's the argument that they're probably going to present with blinders on, saying we had no idea that there was a flood anywhere else. Because again, they'll say, look, like he just said it, Augustus just said, look, we know this is not the time to seed because it's been flooded. Arguably a month ago, this area was flooded. So that's not what they're doing. They're not trying to take care of what's going on the surface. They're trying to take care of what's going on under the surface. And this is what people are missing. This is what reporters, news agencies are missing. So his conscience is clear from the perspective, hey, we're only filling aquifers. See, that's all we're doing. So they just stay in that zone going, I'm not doing anything illegal. And he's not. Where the problem is if you create rain in an already saturated area or there's runoff and all the pools, all the rivers, all the man-made lakes are already full and you're busy filling the aquifers, you're not paying attention to what's going on around you. Enter what happened to the county of Kerr, specifically Kerrville, specifically Mystic Lake. So again, you can't say, oh, wow. You can't ask the question, were you over the county of Kerr? No, I wasn't. Okay, were you over Bell? No. Were you over Valverde? No. Were you over Terrell? No. Brewster? No. Jeff Davis? Heck no. Presido? No. No, man. You can go on naming 99% of the counties and he'll say no. Because he started in Carnes. Specifically Carnes County Airport. That's where the plane took off from. He said it in another interview. What's the place called? Bungie. I forget the name of the area. Just slipped my mind. That's where he took off from. 20 minutes, he said. 2,500 feet, he said. 60 milligrams of silver iodide, he said. 10 million gallons, he said. Oh, I don't have to keep notes. I know all this stuff in my head because I've watched so many interviews. So some of it's going to stick. Now we're going to watch his interview and see if he changes his story a little bit. See if he changes his story a little bit. But I think this is what's really going on is underneath the surface, the aquifers. I think that's the war right there. It's not on top. They don't care what happens to homes on top. All right, so let's go back to this tab.
And so these entities, these farms and municipal governments, they contract with us to make more rain when there is drought. We were flying a cloud seeding operation for about 20 minutes on July 2nd at about 1 p.m. Central Time.
Okay. July 2nd, 1 p.m. for 20 minutes. I hope you guys are taking notes. If not, that's okay. Come back and watch this video again. We got to keep these timelines. We got to keep them intact because history has a funny way of erasing itself. It just does. So July 2nd at about 1 p.m., 20 minutes, 1 o'clock Central Time. So that is 12 p.m. 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's when he said he commenced this operation, July 2nd.
That cloud seeding flight seeded 2 clouds where we dispersed about 70 grams worth of silver iodide. That's the material we use.
70 grams now. 2 days ago it was 60 grams, Shane. And then it was 65 grams. Now it's 70 grams. That's a big difference. That's 10 grams difference. And you're talking about 20 minutes. Now you're telling me for a company that's supposed to be specific and transparent, you don't know how much silver iodide was released into the atmosphere? Okay, let's go.
And that's like 10 Skittles worth of material. We seeded those clouds, and then they then precipitated and dissipated over the course.
10 Skittles. Now, I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure 10 Skittles is 10 flares that are on a plane that they use so you can actually disperse 5 to 10 grams of silver iodide in these planes, and you disperse them over 10 to 20 flares. So I think that's what he's talking about when he says 10 Skittles. So that tells me that that was a plane that he was using and not a drone because they don't have that many Skittles. But a drone, I think it'd be easier, but a plane, if you're using a plane, it's going to be in operation for more than 20 minutes. You got to do a safety check. I've flown in one of those type of Cessnas, not the cloud seeding one, because all you have to do is just retrofit any plane pretty much for cloud seeding. But I've been in these Cessna planes, and it takes a little while before you can actually get up into the air. Once you get up in the air, yeah, in 20 minutes, you can cover a lot of territory in 20 minutes. Continue.
Of 2 hours after. So those clouds themselves were gone. The aerosols that we dispersed precipitated out and dispersed away. They didn't remain in the atmosphere long after.
Okay. I'm going to try and let this guy go because I keep interjecting. Some of you guys don't like that, but I want to always pay attention to the words that he's saying, that within 20 minutes, it dispersed, the aerosol dispersed, and then the clouds dissipated. Done in 20 minutes. Given the climate and everything, it seems kind of questionable. I'll give him a little bit of a pass. Usually what happens is if you don't find the right temperature when you release these iodine particles into the atmosphere, what will happen is it could carry for hundreds of miles, if not thousands of miles, because it's not activated. So the idea that it worked within 20 minutes and dissipated the clouds, it's kind of, I'm giving him a little bit of a pass, but it sounds a little weird because that's not typically what happens. They don't go up in an airplane for 20 minutes and make the clouds disappear. It's not what happens. They make it rain. They're a Rainmaker organization. All right, let's continue.
We then saw the National Weather Service issue their flash flood warning at about 1 a.m. on the 3rd.
Okay. I know I said I wasn't going to stop it, but if you're keeping track of dates, he's now saying that on July 3rd at 1 a.m., 24 hours before Mystic Camp got flooded, he said that he saw a meteorologist give them the warning that there is an imminent flood at 1 a.m. on July 3rd. I think he got his time mixed up. I think what he meant to say is July 4th. And I think what he meant to say is he was flying July 3rd. Less than 24 hours before the flood. But let's give him a little bit of pass. Let's help him out a little bit. Because if he is saying that July 3rd at 1 a.m., he got a meteorologist to say that there's an imminent flood, that's a problem. Because now you're admitting to the idea that you knew 24 hours in advance that there was an imminent flood and you did nothing. You didn't warn one person. Again, I think he made a mistake. I think he meant to say July 4th, but then he's like, oh, crap. I've been telling everybody I've been flying 2 days before, but really it's actually July 3rd. So now I can't go back. So I'm going to blend the dates and maybe nobody will know. Maybe Black Swan won't pay attention to this stuff. The real number is July 3rd at about 1:18 p.m. was a flash flood warning to Kerr County in area saying there is a potential flood coming, but they get flash floods a lot. They talk about it a lot. They get warnings, alerts, little thing, and nobody was kind of taking that serious because, again, all the weathermen are going to bed. At 1 a.m. on July 4th, the warnings start coming out, as in, too late, 30-foot swells, you're done. Try to stay put if your cabin doesn't wash away. It's too late. It's too late. So nothing happened for 12 hours. According to this guy, and again, I think he made a mistake here because when you're lying, you start mixing up dates and you can't figure things out. And you're like, was I with that woman on Tuesday or was that Wednesday? Caught red-handed. Was I in the casino? Was that Friday? Did I say Friday? I meant Thursday. I wasn't there on Friday. Well, how come we see a poker chip receipt? You bought poker chips on Friday. Oh, yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Whether you mean, I know I said July 2nd, but what I meant was July 3rd, hoping that no one would know that I said July 2nd. I'm really hoping that my company doesn't get shut down because of this. Crap, I'm in trouble. All right, so let me back up without interrupting this guy.
We seeded those clouds, and then they precipitated and dissipated over the course of 2 hours after. So those clouds themselves were gone. The aerosols that we dispersed precipitated out and dispersed away. They didn't remain in the atmosphere long after. We then saw the National Weather Service issue their flash flood warning at about 1 a.m. on the 3rd. We, as cloud seeders, are regulated by the state of Texas with something called suspension criteria, which means if there already is risk of flooding, if there already is too much moisture on the ground and any more rain could cause flooding, if the reservoirs are too full and could spill over and cause flooding, then we're legally required by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation to suspend operations to do no harm. And not only did we...
So I have a hot take. AI is not just a buzzword if you use Monday CRM.
I'm so glad you...
act in accordance with Texas state law and stop before those operations happen. Our meteorologists were capable enough to identify that there was going to be risk of flooding before we were required to suspend operations.
Who did it? Who daddy? Who diddy daddy? Daddy, diddy daddy. This guy's in trouble, folks. You might not be fully understanding yet what's happening here, but how can I say this? How can I explain it to you that he's actually if I was a lawyer, I would say case closed, Your Honor. I think this guy needs to plead for his life, as in he needs to make some kind of an agreement with the state saying, here's what I'm going to do to fix the problem. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you guys millions of dollars or whatever it is to Kerrville, and I'm going to punish me for the next 20, 30 years in fines. And then I'm going to help whatever I can, do research, whatever it is, while I have those ankle bracelets so that you could track where he's going. He needs to do whatever he can to make sure that Kerrville's comfortable. So why am I saying all this stuff? He just said that there is a law, and you can get around this law, but he just said that there is a law, and I'll play it again, that says that if you know that there is a flood or an imminent flood, or there's potential danger for you seeding, because again, this is a big deal, weather modification. If you know the area has been hit already before with flooding or a storm, aka Barry, a hurricane went through, you don't think there was any precipitation? You don't think that rocked anyone's world coming through? You don't think precipitation is coming in from the Gulf that's going to make things worse? That doesn't register that maybe you should not seed? He just told us the reason why he's seeding is because he got hired to to basically fill aquifers. Now he's saying that there's a law in place that says you have to stop once you know that there's an imminent flood. He just said July 3rd at 1 a.m. he got wind from his own meteorologist, and this is something you have to pay attention to. He has his own meteorologist that they have their own proprietary technology when it comes to radar. Meaning his reports are different than the reports that you see on TV. So all the news outlets are getting something else, but he is specific in listening to his own meteorologist, not yours, not the one that's on Fox or any of the other channels going on in Texas. That's different. They get different reports, and there was nothing going on all day. I know. I look for it. I was watching all the various networks, and they're like, nothing to see here. Happy 4th of July for tomorrow and all this stuff. We're going to sleep. All day, July 3rd, nothing showed up on the radar. In fact, people are saying the Midlands and North Carolina and all this, watch out for Chantel and all this, the remnants of after Chantel and all this kind of stuff. Chantel was, I think, just moving in because they name all the storms in alphabetical. They have names for everything. I forget what the first one was called. You got Barry and then Chantel. The next one is Dexter. And this is June 1st is the beginning of hurricane season. So you got till November. This is just beginning, folks. And I do believe it's going to get worse. I do believe it's getting worse. All right. So let's see. I'm just reading some of the comments. Okay. Let's go back to the video. Hope you guys are enjoying this. That was a lot of information, but I promise I'll try not to stop. I'll back it up a bit.
To suspend operations to do no harm. And not only did we act in accordance with Texas state law and stop before those operations happened, our meteorologists were capable enough to identify that there was going to be risk of flooding before we were required to suspend operations, and then had no effect whatsoever on the remnants of Tropical Storm Barry that did blow in and induce the floods that occurred. And just for context on scale too, real quick, the best cloud seeding operations that we've seen to date, either from our operations or from the best-in-class research at universities across the Western U.S., those cloud seeding operations produce tens of millions of gallons of precipitation over the course of about an hour or two, distributed over hundreds of square miles. The flooding that occurred, that system dumped like 3 to 4 trillion gallons of precipitation. So one, we weren't operating during that storm. Two, the aerosols that were dispersed in the prior day could not have persisted long enough to affect that. And then three, even if we had been seeding during that system and we weren't, there's no way that cloud seeding could have produced as much water as we saw from that flood.
Well, let me ask you real quick.
That's interesting. I don't want to be the guy that's calling you a liar, but what I find interesting is the very association that you work for. We'll talk about this once you introduce that idea. They go on record saying that they've produced billions of liters of water in a year, in a season. And this was back in 2016 when they're just ramping up to start getting good at it, cloud seeding. In 2016, imagine filling up 180,000 stadiums with water up to 1 feet. Imagine filling it up with water up to 1 feet, 180,000 stadiums, hundreds of thousands of swimming pools. That's how much the association that Rainmaker works for, that hired Rainmaker before he existed, this is how much water they were producing in Texas in 2016. They arguably, the data would suggest that he increased the waterfall by 10, 20, even 30% in Texas. It's all over their website. So it's not 10 millions, tens of million. That's not accurate. Maybe he's saying for 10 milligrams or something like that, but what he's saying is not accurate especially for the company that he's working for. They've documented their journey ever since inception as to how much water they're producing in Texas. So, anyways, a little sleight of hand with numbers here.
The area that you guys did cloud seed, is that close to the areas that experienced flooding?
So we were flying about 150 miles southeast of the areas that experienced the worst flooding.
So I gotta be honest, there's flooding in New Mexico right now. I'm up here in the DC area in West Virginia.
So this is where they go into a little bit of there's flooding everywhere. So you couldn't be responsible for all the flooding everywhere, right? And it's like, no. So they kind of throw you down a little, what do you want to call it? Another rabbit trail to go after to kind of throw you off. But we'll listen to what this guy says.
Virginia, and we've had a month or 2 months of unprecedented rainfall where the locals are telling us it's really, really bad. To me, it sounds like what you guys were doing on the surface is completely unrelated, as is what you were saying. And when I saw the story yesterday, people were saying it's cloud seeding, They were cloud seeding right before this flood. This is what caused it. It seems like a big leap where you have to actually break down what it is you guys were doing. Then you got to answer a few other questions. Why is there flooding in New Mexico? And why is there heavy rainfall in Appalachia?
No, you don't have to answer all that stuff. You don't, because that's not what we're talking about here. It's like saying you have to answer to what's going on in Colorado. Well, no, he doesn't. We're talking about within 150 miles of one of the worst floods to hit Kerrville. That's what we're talking about. Highly coincidental.
I don't want to say unprecedented, but it's I mean, no joke. The amount of rain we've gotten has been really insane. So we're in an elevated position, and the groundwater level was ridiculously high, and I had to get a pump for my basement. But so let me ask you this then. Let's talk about scale. The operation you did, when you do this stuff, you send out a drone, a couple drones. How many drones is it?
Are you struggling to turn your leads into loyal customers? Discover the secret to transforming your sales.
We'll fly like up to 3 drones at a time, or in the case of Texas, we do still use airplanes. Most of our operations we're using drones because they're far more efficient, but we inherited some planes in Texas and operate with those there.
Okay, so now he told us it wasn't a drone used, it was a plane. 20 minutes, remember? He said 20 minutes. Fly a plane for 20 minutes almost seems like a waste of time unless you know exactly where you're going. It's interesting.
And you said that you released about 10 Skittles worth of material?
Correct. 10 Skittles worth of silver iodide. And it's also worth saying too, just for context and like references, that flight was conducted at about 1,600 feet above ground level. So
Okay, 1,600 feet above ground level, AGL. In an interview that I showed a couple of days ago, he said 2,500 feet and 60 grams of silver iodide. So now he's changing it. If you are a precise company, as in you document, you say we're using 60 grams of silver, 65 grams, 70 grams, 55 grams. We fly to 1,000 feet, 1,600 feet, 2,000 feet. You have to be accurate because you got to justify your paycheck. You got to justify that you did what you said you're going to do. And they would tell you, well, where did you go fly? Well, none of your business. You can't say that to the person that hired you. You have to say, well, we flew at 2,500 feet. Oh, but your planes go up to 20,000 feet. Why are you so low, bro? Why are you so low? You told in an interview the other day it was 2,500 feet. Today you're telling us it's 1,600 feet. Which is it, bro? Come on, bro. You could tell us.
of silver iodide. And it's also worth saying too, just for context and like references, that flight was conducted at about 1,600 feet above ground level. So 1,600 feet above ground level was about its max altitude. And so again, for the folks that are
Again, for folks that don't understand, that's not your max altitude. That's not the max. The max is about 20,000 feet below commercial airlines. They fly about 30,000 feet. So 1,600 feet is kind of low. It's kind of low. I would be more like I would see like a drone. But he said, typically we use 3 drones on every operation. Not today. Not today. We use the plane because we have a couple of planes going. So we use the plane.
concerned about the long streaks that they see in the sky, right? They are sometimes called contrails or sometimes called chemtrails. I have not yet seen any evidence to suggest there is malevolent government conspiracy to produce chemtrails that are giving us neurotoxins or mind control viruses or chips or something like that. I'm totally open to evidence of it though. And so a lot of people have sent me, pictures of the sky. But those streaks that you see are occurring around 20, 30,000 feet. And so our operations, our flights, be they with drones or airplanes, are 10,000 feet lower than that, if not 20.
How does when you release a small amount of material, there it seems like less than a drop of water in in the ocean compared to what this flooding and these storms actually were. But you kind of mentioned it. Is it possible for a cloud seeding entity to create rainfall that would result in floods of this magnitude?
So the reason why we have suspension criteria is because cloud seeding produces precipitation, right? And if there are already coincident risks, like a huge
Cloud seeding produces precipitation. I like how he's minimizing what they do. His freaking company is called Rainmaker. Make it rain. I'm sure they joked about it in the offices. Let's make it rain in the planes, in the drones, with their customers. Hey, money Rainmaker. How you doing today? Make us some money. Let's make it rain. It's not let's make some precipitation. It minimizes what you do, bro. Be proud of what you do. Be proud of it.
system that is going to cause flooding naturally, cloud seeding it would be imprudent, right? There's no way physically to produce 4 trillion gallons worth of precipitation with cloud seeding technology that exists, or with anything that's even been theorized about now. That being said, there's something that I think a lot of people will bring up in the comments that I want to address transparently, right? Like, I think there's a lot of mistrust around weather modification. It's obviously a very consequential technology, and I have to be as transparent as possible to earn the trust of these people that have understandable concerns. There have been in the past operations that were deliberately intended to cause flooding. So if you look at Operation Popeye in the Vietnam War, the U.S. Air Force was conducting cloud seeding flights to try to flood out the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Now, the fundamental difference between cloud seeding now and in the past isn't just that we use drones. It's that with radar, and specifically new kinds of radar, we can measure what our effect is on the cloud. Whereas before, you would fly up into a cloud, sprinkle some magic beans, and then maybe it would rain, maybe it wouldn't. It's hard to say what the effect was. We can now measure that. And so how effective was Operation Popeye? It's very hard to say. But it's worth acknowledging that very publicly.
It's not very hard to say. It's documented. Operation Popeye was a success from the perspective that they could extend the monsoon season in Vietnam. And it was so successful that they created almost like a treaty in 1972 to say, look, we don't want America to use this technology on our country, i.e. China, i.e. Russia, i.e. Europe. France, we don't want you using this technology on the United States of America. We don't want you using it on Ukraine. We don't want you using it on China. Are we all clear that we're not going to use our weather modifying technology on other countries? All in favor? Yes, we all agree. And then somebody puts up their hand quietly and says, one little question. Does that mean that we can't use it on our own people? No, that's a stupid question. Of course you can use it on your own people. Man, that's why we didn't write it in to the treaty. All we said was you can't attack other countries, but we didn't say the government couldn't use it on their own. That's not in there. Interesting. This is why you guys come here, folks. This is why you guys come here.
Because it has been done by the U.S. government before, and to my knowledge, hasn't been done since. But again, if there is any evidence of that, happy to engage with people online about it.
I'd bet.
That's why he shakes his head. I would be happy to, if anyone has any questions about whether or not the government is still using cloud seeding modifications, I would be happy to discuss that with anyone. Yeah. That's why you're shaking your head. It's because you're not buying what you're selling us. You're not buying what you're selling us. And the idea that you're saying that the government since 1966 has never used weather modification technology on its own, or on other senators, other governors, other states, is weird. It's a weird thing to say. Maybe that's why you're drinking your coffee, because you're like, crap, can't get out of these stupid interviews. I'm digging myself a grave.
That governments definitely use weather modifications, be it Operation Popeye or otherwise, for strategic purposes. And I bet they're still doing it to this day. Why not? Like, why abandon that stuff? But I do think it's funny that your company, which let me just say this: your company is getting blamed for this.
He's really thirsty, isn't he? He's been drinking a lot. I think he was sipping coffee. Now he's sipping an energy drink.
Massive torrential downpour because of the concerns about government use of weather modification in the past. So just to clarify, you said you launched 3 drones?
In a typical operation, we do, but we flew a plane in Texas.
Oh, okay. So what was, you talked a little about this. What was this, like a farmer said, hey, I need some rain? And what is the scale area that your seeding operation would impact?
My name needs no introduction. Every Canadian knows who I am. Today is a lucky day for those who see this message.
Yeah. So in Texas, our customers are associations of counties and private farming interests that need more water either for their crops or for their reservoirs or for their aquifers, like I said. And so the flight on the second that people have referenced repeatedly and saying was causal for the flooding, that was for the South Texas Weather Modification Association.
So the South Texas Weather Modification Association, that's who he was contracted to work for on July 2nd. He keeps saying July 2nd. I would almost suggest perhaps it was July 3rd, because again, there was no reason for him to not operate on July 3rd because there was no flood warnings. So I think he's trying to stay away from July 3rd by saying July 2nd. And now he coughed up who, and better believe people are going to be watching this video and they're going to be looking up this organization. Well, let's help you out a little bit. Let's see if we can find out who these. Here it is. I think it's here. No, where'd it go? Here it is. Let me just go to the home page. I think this is important. All right, so let's go to this tab. Let's close that. Oh, man. Let me go back to find it. I hate it when you get so many menus popping up. Give me 1 second. I just lost it. I just lost the website. Let me see if I can find it here. Here it is. Let's go back to the About Us page. Give me 1 second. Right. Okay, so let's go back. To the screen. Right here, About Us. This is the organization that he works for. It is called the South Texas Weather Modification Association. History, 1996. So the name of the organization, of course, South Texas Weather Modification Association. So this is the history. So remember when he said, nothing to see here, folks. We don't make it rain. We just make precipitation. Well, if you go down here, not that I like reading the stuff, but the phone's just blowing up here. Let's just go down here, shall we? Let's go down here. They actually had let's see here. Where is it here? $573,370 acres they had, which is crazy. Look at this is how much water that they produced in 2016. 573,370 acre feet of water. So every acre you can measure and say, well, that's 1 foot deep per acre. That's how much water they produced in 2016. All right, so let's go back. So back to this. Let me just look around a little bit on the site. So this is the site that you want to look up. Again, the name of it is they document everything, so it's not like you can make up stuff. South Texas Weather Modification Association. So if you go to the menu, tells you about their project evaluations, about us, their forecast, their links, their ops, their radar, contact, the media, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of projects, all kinds of stuff. All right, so let's go back to Rainmaker guy. Let's go back to him. Actually, let's go to a different interview. It goes on and on there, but I want to continue to document this stuff. So I think it's important to show you a couple of other clips because he changes his story a little bit. So let's see here. This is kind of interesting. This is from France. So this is France. So let's just go here. Okay. So let's go to France and see what they have to say about what's happening in Texas. So the question is, recent cloud seeding did not cause the deadly Texas flash floods. From France 24 English. Isn't it interesting that they're telling you, no, they did not. Okay, so let's watch this video clip here.
By the big board, Vedica Bell is waiting with truth or fake. Good evening, Vedica. The U.S. state of Texas still reeling from deadly flash floods on the 4th of July. As the death toll continues to climb, rumors online suggest the cause of the floods isn't in fact natural and actually is due to recent weather modification operations. Truth or fake? Please explain.
Yes, Mark, is cloud seeding to blame for the deadly flash floods in Texas that have left at least 100 people dead and around 160 people more missing? Well, that's the claim circulating on social media and the theory spreading online, with users questioning a cloud seeding operation that took place just 2 days before the flash floods broke out. So if we have a look at some of these online reactions, this user says a company called Rainmaker conducted a cloud seeding mission on the 2nd of July over Texas Hill Country. 2 days later, the worst flood in their history occurred in the exact same area that the Rainmaker flights were. Another post here, this one is by Candace Taylor, who is in fact a Republican congressional candidate. Well, she says that it's fake weather, real damage. This is not just climate change. It is in fact cloud seeding, geoengineering and manipulation, and fake weather causes real tragedy, and that is murder. We have another post here. This one had over 1.5 million views and counting. Now, this user has posted 2 screenshots that appear to be from a report by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Screenshots that show that this Rainmaker, this company, did in fact carry out a rain enhancement operation in Texas on the 2nd of July. Now, for anyone watching at home, if you're not aware of what cloud seeding is, it is an operation that uses chemicals, typically silver iodide, and that induces the formation of ice crystals or water droplets that are already present in the cloud, but they're not efficiently being turned into rain. But Mark, just
not efficiently turned into rain. Well, see, it's interesting to have news networks that are now defending Rainmaker. You got to ask yourself, why are countries outside of the U.S. defending Rainmaker, when Rainmaker, the name itself, tells you what the whole idea of their company is. It's not to make precipitation here and there, it's to make it rain. And she just said, that's not exactly what happens. Well, you put silver iodide in the clouds and it makes it rain because it makes the water droplets heavier and it falls to the ground. See? Once the condensation creates water droplets that are large enough, the rain will fall. That's what you call rain.
You know, these posts and these theories here, this is just a fraction of what I've seen circulating online.
Yeah, a lot of people are on to Rainmaker, and I don't want to say I started it, but I was pretty close to being the first one that was talking about Rainmaker, saying, I don't think you're up to any good. And now word is starting to get out all over the place. So I would greatly appreciate it if you're watching this to subscribe to this channel and share it with someone else. What do you guys think? Did Rainmaker cause this? If not, he needs to defend himself, show the report, show exactly where you were. I'd be happy to see the report.
And these claims here, they've really unleashed a wave of misinformation about cloud seeding and weather modification as a whole.
So the company Rainmaker, Vedika, accused of triggering these floods. So what does Rainmaker have to say about this?
Well, the CEO of Rainmaker hasn't dodged the accusations. He took to X to clear them up and confirm. He said that Rainmaker did not operate in the affected area on the 3rd or 4th of July.
And I've never asked if you operated on the 3rd or the 4th, because that's ridiculous. That's when the flood is. It's like saying after you rob a bank and the investigators come in the next day because the bank was closed over the weekend, and they go to the vault and they open up the vault on Monday and they say, oh, there's no money in this bank. And then they finally catch someone and they're like, were you in that bank on Monday? And he's like, no, I wasn't. I'll even take a lie detector test. I was not in the bank on Monday. Free to go. Go. You're free. It's not what we're asking. That's not the right question. We're not asking you, Rainmaker, if you were hovering above Kerrville with your drones, with your airplane. We're not asking you if you were working on July 4th. Your job was done on July 2nd. You did it. Bravo. You caused a flood. So that's it's weird that this organization is trying to help him and say, this is misinformation now. It's just all over the place. Misinformation. Is it misinformation? I just showed you the website. I just showed you how much water they produce. And Rainmaker said that he worked for this association. Let's continue. The rabbit hole gets deeper, folks.
July or contribute to the floods that occurred over the region. He said that the last seeding mission took place on the afternoon of July 2nd, and 2 clouds were seeded in that mission. But he said that those clouds that were seeded on July 2nd dissipated over 24 hours prior to the developing storm complex.
So now they dissipated over 24 hours. He said it within 2 hours. Now he's saying on X on July 6th that it took 24 hours to dissipate. Huh. That sure is different than 2 little tiny clouds disappearing over 2 hours. Now you're saying dissipated over 24 hours, taking us into July 3rd, arguably into July 4th.
That would produce the flooding rainfall. So the operation happened, 2 clouds were seeded, and then they dissipated quickly. Now, he also said that Rainmaker as a company, in fact, suspended that same day its operations indefinitely. And that's because a senior meteorologist observed an unusually high moisture content in the air. So the cloud seeding operation took place, 2 were seeded, and then the company suspended its operation.
Okay. So, according to Augusto, a senior meteorologist, he doesn't say senior meteorologist he doesn't say what company, but it's probably his. Senior meteorologist observed unusually high moisture content prior to the event's arrival. using NWS sounding data. It was at this point that our meteorologists determined that we did a great job and said, you guys are done. Come home, boys. Oh, wait, no, that's not what it says. It says that our meteorologists determined that we should suspend further operations indefinitely. Yeah, because you're in trouble now. You got to get out of there. Get out of the scene of the crime. You got to leave. As you can see, we suspended operations on July 2nd, a day before the NWS issued any flood warnings. Oh, it's interesting. Call sign 60, landing 8021. So they took off. That's so funny. They took off at 1801. According to my timeline, that's not 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That is 6 o'clock, is it not? 1801, isn't that military time? Isn't that what planes use? So you said you took off at 1 o'clock Central. And then I said, oh, that's like 12 o'clock Mountain Standard, at 2 o'clock Eastern. You took off at 6 o'clock at night. And you landed at 6:21. You didn't take off at 1, so you lied about the time you took off. You lied about the amount. You said it was 60, and then you upped it to 70. You said you dispersed the silver iodide at 2,500 feet, and then you said it was 1,600 feet. And I think to the right is the county that he was seeding, which is Karn, or that could be the airport that he took off from. Here are the flight logs for July from our South Texas program. I would love to see those logs. I think that should clearly be public. I think everybody should look at those logs and say, you said 1 o'clock. Why 6? So that would mean late afternoon on July, senior meteorologist, after they dispersed their silver, takes about 20 minutes, I guess, depending who you talk to and all this stuff. Your operation was 20 minutes long. Started observing that an unusually high moisture content prior to the event's arrival. Notice how people that are lying distance themselves from what actually was going on. He doesn't say the county affected, Kerr. Doesn't say Kerrville. He says the event's arrival. Like this is an event. An event is something that is man-made, that is produced. I don't hear people calling it a storm. Maybe they could do that. But in this case, it's weird that the senior meteorologist said, hey, look, there's a high moisture content prior to the event arrival. It was at this point that our meteorologists, plural, determined that we would suspend future operations, meaning your job is done. You've done your job. Go home. My question is, if you knew that there was a flood, an imminent flood on July 2nd, and you flew over the area or close to it, or 100 miles away, and it only took you 20 minutes, why didn't you warn Kerr? Because your meteorologists are all over it. No one else has your technology in the whole world. Apparently you have the best, because you predicted that it was going to flood. You said that prior to the event's arrival. It's bad news for you. All right.
And he says that those 2 clouds that were seeded in that operation would have had no effect on the floods 2 days later because they had dissipated by then.
So is it possible then there's a link between weather modification and these flash floods?
Well, Mark, according to the science and the meteorologists, no, it's not possible.
Okay, according to the science, whenever you see that show up, you know you're in for a story. So now we have this guy, Travis Herzog, who's probably, if I were to dig deep, I'm sure he's probably associated with the organization that Rainmaker was contracted by. I'm sure, because he's a meteorologist. I don't think he works for Rainmaker. That much I know. But he's now saying that this isn't normal. This is like, okay, let's just read. How could this happen? It's a question many of us are asking. With broken hearts, the death toll continues to mount. The wake of horrific Texas Hill Country flooding. We want to make sense of this tragedy, and we never wanted to see it happen again. As a Houston-based meteorologist who was born and raised in the outskirts of Texas Hill Country and witnessed these types of flash floods firsthand, I don't think you witnessed this type. I want to lend my voice and meteorological experience to help with the answers. So he tries to explain it away. Nothing to see here, folks.
This is a post by award-winning meteorologist Travis Herzog, who was born and raised in that affected Texas Hill Country region. Now, if we look at what he said that it is physically impossible for cloud seeding to create a storm of this magnitude or size. He goes on to say that, in fact, cloud seeding cannot even create a single cloud.
That's not what we're talking about. I have not said that in any of my videos. Rainmaker has not said that in his videos, that they create clouds. See how the sleight of hand is? Cloud seeding cannot create a storm of this magnitude or size. In fact, if you want the facts, cloud seeding cannot even create a single cloud. All it could do is take an existing cloud and enhance the rainfall by up to 20%. Most estimates have the rainfall enhancement much lower. It's much lower. Like it's very low. I'm unaware of any active seed clouding operations that occurred on Thursday night. Yeah, nobody's seeding on Thursday night. That's not what we're talking about. And he's saying, I'm not aware. So why would you even be aware? Is it because perhaps you have an association with Rainmaker? And Rainmaker said they're not operating on Thursday. You guys are silly. We don't operate. We never operated on Thursday or the Friday of the storm. We weren't there. So why do you keep? And for another fact, we don't produce clouds out of thin air, and we were never there. Sleight of hand going on here.
And all it can do is take an existing cloud and enhance the rainfall by up to 20%. Now, meteorologists and weather experts across the board tended to agree with him. One of them was Matthew Capucci, who said that cloud seeding played zero role in the deadly Texas floods, and that's because it is a small-scale thing that doesn't create moisture. It just helps droplets in the clouds bump into each other to form bigger droplets that then fall. Now, I also want to talk about the region of Texas.
It's a small-scale thing. You see how they diminish it? Nothing to see here. We can't do anything. Okay, well, give me a second here. Let me go back. Let me go back to see what basically what the mission statement is of Moneymaker. Just see if I can find it real quick here. Let me see. All right. All right, so let's go to, this is a video by Rainmaker, and it was made a year ago because the company was only a year old, or it's only been around for a year. And the title is called We Control the Weather. So let me just play it for you. Let me just show it to you. We control. We can control. So the news organizations are saying no, but this title is We Can Control the Weather. Rainmaker. It's from Rainmaker. They can control it. So let's just listen to this little opening here. God gives man dominion over
the heavens, the seas, and the earth. The seas are totally unconquered by mankind. And the skies, give us trouble with drought and hurricanes all the time. Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, Tucson, and Phoenix will become uninhabitable. 2 million or so acres of farmland in California alone will be lost to the desert. We are making Earth habitable at Rainmaker by enhancing precipitation and ending droughts and inclement weather patterns. The company I dropped out of college to build.
I'm probably going to get a little strike on this one, but I thought this was kind of important to show because they do believe they can control the weather. So I just wanted to take you to real quick here. I just wanted to take you real quick to Genesis 1:26 because he said God told us to dominate the weather. Well, if you go to Genesis 1:26, so 1:26, and God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over all creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So I guess if you use "and all over the earth," over all the cattle and all over the earth, I guess you could say that includes the heavens. But it's interesting that God never said for man to rule over another person, nor heaven here. And God is in charge of creating weather. So I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating that they build their whole structure on the idea that God is telling us that we can control the weather. And I just showed you that Solomon said that all the rivers go back to where they came. The weather or the wind goes back through its own circuit, all this kind of stuff. So let's just go back into who this organization is about. I think this is important.
Build was a vertical SaaS company that automated regulatory compliance for groundwater users, mostly farms and HOAs. It was an IoT flow meter and some backend software that did all the reporting. I became super familiar with.
So there's the drone that he uses. I don't know if you could see that right there. See the little drone? It's kind of a big drone, but that's one that they actually modified themselves. They created their own drones.
Groundwater users, mostly farms and HOAs. It was an IoT flow meter and some backend software that did all the reporting. I became super familiar with water policy and water infrastructure. And what I learned after working on that for a few years, the dialectic between not using water anymore, like no more showers, no more agriculture, low flow toilets, and desalinating the entire Pacific Ocean is not a good way to solve water scarcity. And we probably should investigate alternative solutions. I looked into brackish groundwater desalination. There's these huge aquifers full of brackish groundwater that's never been tapped into before because nobody knows what to do with the brine. I looked into urban water recycling, and that's good, and there's some big players in the space already, but it isn't going to produce enough extra fresh water to meet agricultural demands.
Now, every Canadian can get $1,000 every day. It is quite easy to earn this amount in one day. No special skill.
Cloud seeding was actually invented by these three fellows. They were doing some totally unrelated cloud physics experiments and poured some silver iodide into the artificial cloud chamber, saw the increased ice nucleation, the plumes of larger ice crystals forming from the silver iodide, and then decided, because it was the 40s and dudes rocked, we're just going to throw this out of the back of our plane and see what happens. And so the first man-made snowstorms were produced over Western New York in the 40s. And the bread and butter of glaciogenic cloud seeding, you have supercooled water, so a saturated cloud with more water that's below 0 degrees Celsius than can be frozen naturally. You'll get a profile of crystals that's more like this, really small and diffuse crystals. They're not heavy enough to fall in the first place, and they're not survivable enough to make it to the ground even if they do start to precipitate. By introducing silver iodide or other nucleation agents, you can shift the profile of the crystals formed from down here in the same conditions up to here, which are denser crystals that are more likely to precipitate either as snow or rain. And I found cloud seeding just by going through a rabbit hole online. I then just decided, hey, why not go to the Weather Modification Association conference, where researchers from around the world are researching the most cutting edge ways to modify the weather. What I learned when I went there was that they'd solved the attribution problem in the Snowy project. So Snowy was a seminal research project in cloud seeding. You know, just because we fly a drone up in the sky and spray some magic beans and it rains, that doesn't mean that we caused it to rain. And so what Snowy did was they took really high resolution radar, like what we're using. In fact, it's the same radar truck. They measured the lines of precipitation that were exclusively in the path of the seeding aircraft. From the plumes of increased droplet size behind those seeding aircraft, they were able to tell farmers exactly how much more water they produced for them. We could commercialize this technology for the first time in 80 years because we could tell end users exactly what the value prop was. That was what led me to founding Rainmaker. So Rainmaker, in summary, is one, using more sophisticated radar sensing to identify opportunities to seed and then measure the outcomes of seeding. Two, using drones for more cost-effective, safer, and timely delivery to the clouds. Three is dispersing the nucleation agent in a way that is just more cost-effective and also yields a greater precipitation outcome. And four is experimenting with new nucleation agents to produce something that has higher yields, higher seasonal and geographic operability, and less environmental.
What's kind of interesting about this is he actually almost blew off his thumb. Not funny, because he was playing with some of the pyro that is attached to some of these drones, the back of it, and he was hooking up a circuit for it, and it actually, when he put the circuit together, he accidentally detonated it, and the flare went up, and he actually tore, like, I don't know how many ligaments you got in your thumb, but he tore almost all of them. Dangerous, dangerous. So I don't want to just keep beating on this guy all day long, but I think it's important for you guys to do your homework and your due diligence and stuff. And he strongly believes that he can modify the clouds. That's what they do. And there are over 50 countries in the world that do this stuff, and they've been doing it for at least 40 years. And there's data to back it up. There's experiments done. And like I mentioned earlier, there's no rule saying you can't use one state versus another state, one county against another county. There's nothing in the regulations or bylaws or any of that stuff that said, hey, you can't go against this state. It's not written out. They probably need to write that in there somewhere, but they don't have it there right now. So instead, they have a rule that says, once you see the storm start, stop seeding. I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. That's like saying once you shoot someone, stop shooting. The damage is done. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. And I think if I could use a little bit of a crystal ball, don't like to say that, but you know what I mean. If I could project into the future or predict into the future, I think this company's in trouble. I think they need a fall guy. I think they need a company to punish extremely, to give the people a sense of justice. Meanwhile, money is exchanging hands, and this guy's only like 25 years old. You don't think there's another 20-year-old that you could use to groom and say, look, we're going to throw lots of money. We're going to get you to replace this guy. This guy did something bad. He didn't do it by the books, whatever it is. Because he's singing like a canary. I don't even know if he knows he's a canary. But he's just chirping video after video. And again, if I was his lawyer, I'd be like, dude, stop it. Stop the interviews. It looks just as bad. I think he's caught between a rock and a hard place, because if he doesn't do interviews and the media gets wind that Rainmaker was there, they're just going to run with it. So he tried to get ahead of that storm, and I think he's caught in the vortex of it. I really do. And again, I'm not I don't want him to get the electric chair or any of the crazy stuff that Texas does. But I think there needs to be some kind of a fine against that company if they don't go full transparency. If they're fully transparent and they say, here's exactly how much we used, how much silver, this is where we were, this is why we did it, all this stuff. And I think, to be honest, I think he's been pretty transparent. He's for the aquifers. That's what he's for. He needs to get them full. That's why he got hired. So from that perspective, you can't argue with that. It's outside of his district now that he's causing waves. And that's the problem with these organizations is you're so focused on where you're at, you don't care about who's around you. Tomorrow, a month, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years, 100 years, that's not your concern. You don't think about the ramifications. Instead, you want to play God. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. Please subscribe to this channel. If you have any other insights or things that have popped up, let me send me an email here. Where's a good place to send? Yeah, send an email here. Shayna Black Swan Revelations. If you have any juicy videos that maybe help explain this a little bit more, if you think I'm off, if you think I'm missing something, if you want me to be on your channel to talk about this, I don't mind doing that as well. If you want me to be a guest on your channel, this is probably the easiest way to reach out to me. And I hope I'm wrong about this stuff. I hope it was just a storm that came in and it was something that's totally unpredictable, and it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, you just can't predict it. Like, that could be it. But it seems oddly suspicious. And you guys are getting hammered in the States with floods, and we're only starting. So I think what happens over time is people get desensitized over this, and then they don't care anymore. They're like, well, entertain us. We got to do something else to take, because people are starting to look into all this flooding. And I never paid attention to it last year, but for some reason, I'm honing in on this, and I think people are waking up to these floods, and they're going, wait a minute, something's off here. Something is really strange. And I think once you start going down that rabbit hole, you start digging up stuff. Start with weather modification history. Just go to that website.com by Jim Lee. Go check out there's tons of articles that go all the way back to the 40s. Read books on it, whatever it is. Educate yourself. Ask questions in your area. If you're in Texas, I'd be asking questions like, who's flying over my area? Who's flying over my county? And when? Is this going to affect my crops? How come I'm getting a low yield? It seems like I'm getting so much water here. Is it because of this company that's making it rain? Because, man, there are farmers that get devastated by this stuff, and there's nobody that is standing in for the farmers to say, hey, I think you're owed some money. I think somebody did you harm. I think somebody did you wrong. And there's nobody stepping in for Camp Mystic and all the girls that died there. There's nobody, as far as I know, there's nobody jumping in. They're just saying this is just an act of God. This is just natural. 30-foot swell. Last year, 4 feet. What, next year it's 50 feet or 100 feet? Like, when do we get to the point where we're like, we got to change how we conduct ourselves, how we conduct business, how we mourn for people, how we help the farmers, how we help the parents, all this kinds of, like, eventually we're going to be held accountable to all this stuff. One day, I believe, before God himself, we'll be held accountable by the things that we know, the things that we didn't do, didn't act on, didn't say. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for listening to me. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.
Black Swan Revelations here on YouTube brought you today's mind-bending journey. Dive into the discussion, your comments, questions, prayer requests, and powerful testimonies of Jesus' love are what fueled this community. Did today's episode hit home? Smash that like button. New here? Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a live stream or a video upload. Thanks for being part of today's adventure. Catch you in the next video, or maybe even in the clouds. Stay curious, stay blessed.